I'm Christopher Brannon with the Coeur d'Alene Public Library and the Cooperative Information Network. And this presentation is called Functionality Going Beyond Out of the Box. The idea of this presentation is simply to show some things that I've done to enhance Koha beyond its basic capabilities and hopefully to inspire you to create something new that Koha doesn't currently do. We could depend on developers to incorporate features into Koha, but there is no reason we can't add some enhanced functionality and capabilities beyond what's out of the box and be able to do things to enhance staff workflow or even patron workflow. So hopefully the ideas that I show you here today will inspire you to come up with some great ideas that you can do for your library or your consortium or even the Koha community. I'm going to walk through a few things that I've done over the years and show you some cool ideas that I think might be helpful to you or your colleagues. But before I do that, I wanted to go through a few things that I find might be worthwhile to have in your tool belt if you want to be successful in making modifications to Koha. One of the things that is always going to be helpful is knowing HTML. If you're just simply adding some content to the Koha pages, this is good to know. You can throw basic text and links in your Koha pages, but if you really want to make things look nice and conform to how Koha currently looks, get to know HTML. And there's a link here for a good tutorial. The W3 Schools has several tutorials, and so I'll be pointing to their site for reference, but you can pick any online tutorial or any books, any resources you want to get to know the aspects of HTML and other tools that I'll point out here. jQuery is probably the most important tool that you should learn aside from HTML, because jQuery is the tool that allows you to make modifications to your ILS that no other ILS I've seen so far gives you the liberty of doing. I love jQuery. Ever since we got involved with jQuery back in 2012, I've just been picking up bits and pieces here and there and learning, and am just blown away at the things that I can do today. It's amazing what you can do with Koha that you can't do with regular ILSs. So jQuery is really an important tool in my opinion. Really getting to know MySQL can enhance your experience, not only just writing your basic report, but going beyond that and creating really robust reports. You can incorporate reports in your jQuery modifications to provide new information that wasn't previously on the page. You can save yourself a lot of time with reports that are joined together through unions by running multiple reports all at once. So I will show that in a little bit. Beyond MySQL is something called Koha REST API. I just recently learned about this and started incorporating these tools in some of my jQuery. I guess the simplest way to explain Koha REST API is it's similar to MySQL. You're grabbing information out of Koha, but in this case, you're directly grabbing that information. You're not relying on a report to get that information. So it doesn't rely on you maintaining a report in your reports queue or library for this to work. It works on its own. So the Koha REST API is really good. I'm just learning it. This is a document that was pointed out to me. I don't know if there are any more robust documents out there. And there were some holes in there that I had to ask questions about. And I'm going to throw somebody under the bus, but Luke from Bywater pointed this out to me. And Luke has a little bit more knowledge of the REST API. So if you have questions, Luke, you're the man. Understanding of bootstraps and modals. This is a continuation of HTML, and it's always a good idea to know specific aspects of coding that are used in Koha. Koha is built with Bootstrap and is now incorporating more modals throughout its pages. So understanding both will help you when you're making modifications, especially if you want to keep the look of your changes consistent with the Koha environment. And then beyond those tools, it's always a good idea. Another good tool is keeping connections with people. Keep connections with your support vendor. They can provide good information for you. They can answer questions for you. The Koha community through IRC or Slack or email, I find being connected to people through that community has been invaluable. I have lots of people I can bug and ask questions of when I don't know something. I can ask them about workflows, because my workflows, our library's workflows, our consortium's workflows all differ. And then there are libraries out in other countries that do things completely different. So keeping those connections, asking how they do things will help you to hone what you're building and who it's going to be helpful for. Also, koha-US. I encourage you to be involved with koha-US. If you are not a member, be a member. It is a good organization to be a part of. Also, your staff and your colleagues are good resources. I have ideas that come across my desk all the time. Sometimes they come from staff members or colleagues, but sometimes I just think of something that I've seen staff do and think, I wonder if I can improve that. And I wonder if they did this, or if it worked this way, if that would help them. Asking those colleagues, talking with those colleagues and staff members is going to help you determine whether or not you're going down a rabbit hole, if this is a good idea, if somebody's going to really like this, if this is going to be beneficial to them or other people in the community. So involve your staff members, talk to them, question them. Creativity, be creative. Don't be afraid. Don't give in to your fears about whether or not you're a good coder. Try out new ideas. Run your ideas by people. Again, having those connections. Run those creative ideas past people. Maybe you come up with an idea that you think would be good, but maybe when you run it past somebody, they give you some insight and think, oh, that's good, but what if this? And leads you down another path that might be a little bit better. Be creative and don't be afraid to change things. Some things may fall flat, but you don't know if you don't try. Last but not least, patience. Don't give up. I've had ideas that have taken a long time to cook. Sometimes I can I can knock something out in minutes, but sometimes my ideas are very, very big and take time to hash out. I have one demonstration that I'm doing today of something that I'm unveiling that I was able to do I was able to come up with a concept in a day or two, but to really get it to this point where I wanted to show people and where I felt it was ready to, unleash and let other people work with, took me months. I had a lot of testing to do, so don't give up, have patience. So I want to talk about a few projects I've done. Hopefully they'll be inspirational. I hope you enjoy them. The first project that I want to share is a monthly report. This is based off of a report that George Williams did called the Dashboard. In fact, we feature it on our every other Thursday training videos from koha-US. And in those videos, George broke down elements of his dashboard report over several episodes. So if you really want some details on how a lot of this works, you can go there and find that out. But after doing those videos with George, it inspired me with some reports that I do. I have about 12 reports that I run monthly to grab statistics for our library. And I found his dashboard very inspiring to combine this information and dress it up so that it was easy for me to read and get this information without having to run multiple reports. So I came up with my monthly report. Looks like this. There's a lot of code to it. It heavily depends on unions. And if you don't know about unions, that's why you need some MySQL skills. Learn about unions. The key to using a union is for each report segment to return the same number of columns. If it doesn't, then it doesn't work. George goes through these different aspects and elements in the training videos, so I highly encourage you to look at those. I will include this report that I've created as an example in my presentation notes so that you can take a look at it. You can't see all of it here on this slide, but I'll give the full SQL report to you. There's a lot of information in there, but it'll be a good example for you how this was built. The report itself is fairly fast. I'm going to actually switch over and show you the report real quick. This report has a lot of baked in variables. I'm the only one that uses this particular report for our library, and I'll make copies of it for other libraries in our consortium if they need it, but this is specifically towards our library and our statistics. And I set it up with hard-coded variables, but I have a couple that I set up because I use this monthly, so I'll put in a date range on this, and you can see just how fast this is. Now, again, this uses a union to combine what I had in 12 separate reports, and now it's done in one single report, and it'll be done here in just a second, and you'll see that it's not that slow for having 12 different reports that grab all sorts of different information. So there's our statistics, and basically each report is in its own group with the green header here. And you can see how I've formatted it, again, based off of George Williams' dashboard. So all this information is ready for me to throw into my statistical report. I just have to, key in all the values that it feeds back. And I'm good to go. I don't have to go in and run a report and keep entering the same variables. Basically, I was entering the same date range over and over and over, with some minor elements that were added here and there, specifically, spelling out what library it was for. This saved me a ton of time in my reporting. Next thing I want to talk about is what I call the circulation repository. Basically, this is the circulation page in Koha, and I'm utilizing the Internet Circulation Home HTML preference to add content to this page. This page generally just has the top buttons you see on this page, along with the offline circulation information at the bottom. So the sections in the middle, the weekly reports, the forms, the policies, the contacts, those are all things that I added. I made sure that I formatted this so it looked like the page, so it didn't look like it was just thrown in there. I also had some information links next to the weekly reports that explain how these reports are used, why they're used, and some links next to the CIN contacts so we can quickly edit those lists. So there's a lot you can do with these pages, but this gave a common place for our circulation staff to get information frequently needed, so that we didn't have to go all over the place looking for this information. It's something that all of the consortium uses. So it's just information readily available and easy to keep track of. Next thing I want to show you is a Curbside tool that I developed for a recent pandemic. Curbside, there is a Curbside plugin for Koha that's available, and it's a great tool. I evaluated it and found that it was more than we needed and didn't quite work with our workflow. So I came up with a simple tool that did what we needed to do and worked how we worked. So this tool added a menu item under the More button on the patron checkout screen called Curbside Pickup. And it adds, when you click on this, it adds a modal that collects needed information. So this is an example of that. I've covered up a piece of it because it produces an active barcode. But this modal collects information, and then we'll print a slip for you to use in your curbside service. On our example, it shows a partial patron name. It shows a barcode that's usable. This barcode does not require an installation. I was very adamant to try and find a way to incorporate a barcode where you didn't have to do any external installations. So this is using an online barcode font, I believe from Google, in order to make the barcode. The location field that's there allows you to insert a parking spot number or other location like patron waiting at the door, or you might want to include vehicle color, so you can put basically anything in that spot, but it's mostly about the location of the vehicle or the patron. The notes field is for other things that you might need to know. Maybe you're picking up a kit for kids. You need to know what ages kids are for what age group of kids. So that's what we used that for, but you can put basically anything that you need to know as you're running about grabbing things. When you print the slip, it'll print this information up and you can take that with you. It also, on our example, it includes the item categories, a summary of item categories. Our items are set up with basically most of our items can be picked up on patron hold shelf, but we separate some of our categories, like our DVDs are not kept on the patron shelf. Our games are not kept on the patron hold shelf. Those are kept behind the desk. So including the item categories helps us see, oh, there are some DVDs, or there's some ILLs, or there are some games that we need to grab as well, and those are going to be in a different location. If I didn't include that information, I would assume that all this stuff is on the hold shelf, and I would be looking for stuff, and it's not helpful. Also gives me a count of how many items I'm grabbing, so I make sure that I have everything when I pull stuff off of shelves. This tool is available on the Koha jQuery wiki. I'm not going to run through this on our server because it will actually produce a barcode that's viewable, and I'm not going to expose that on the presentation, but you can grab this jQuery off of the Koha jQuery wiki. Another project I did, and I'm excited about this one. I've been working on this one. This is the one I had a concept for in a couple days, and have been taking several months to hone and tweak and work out bugs on. I had George Williams help me test across the way. I've had other libraries help me, and I feel like it is ready to unleash. It is not on the jQuery wiki just yet. It will be by the time of this presentation, though. This code will allow staff to take a state photo ID and import basic information that is needed in the Koha patron form. It adds a button to the patron form page. That button activates a modal that accepts the scan. Because of the characteristics of the barcode, the scan takes just a few seconds, but it takes time to process that, and so there is a graphic that's included from Sam Herbert. It's an SVG loader graphic. This graphic is available on GitHub. I grabbed that graphic. I incorporated the raw SVG code into it so that you do not have to install the graphic. So again, I'm thinking of other people in the community. I don't want to make this a complicated setup. Basically, all you have to do is install the jQuery and you're ready to go. So the code currently works with Firefox and Chrome. I initially did my testing in Chrome, but when I bounced over to Firefox, I found that Firefox had a few issues, especially with launching into its reader mode. So had to do a little debugging with that, but got that worked out. The code also works with the Honeywell 7580G scanner, the DataLogic QD2430 scanner, and the Zebra Symbol DS4308 scanner. I tested with these three scanners. Initially, I tested with the Honeywell, and then that worked. But when I started having other people try the code, found that the scanners were not all created equal. So I had to learn a little bit more about the scanners. So just because you have a 2D scanner that can scan these kind of barcodes does not necessarily mean it's going to work right out of the gate. There might have to be some debugging and adding some code to work with those particular scanners. So in this example, go to a new, the patrons, go to a new patron. I'm going to add a new patron. So now I'm in the form for adding a new patron. There's a button that's added by the code. I'm going to scan. I'm going to click that button. It opens up a modal. Grab my photo ID, and I'm The photo IDs have the PDF 417 code on the back, and some of them will have another barcode. I find that it is a good idea to cover up that little barcode so you don't scan the wrong one, or the scanner doesn't try to scan both of them. So I just cover that up with my finger, the one that I don't want, and scan the PDF 417 barcode. So I'm just gonna scan that. There's our little graphic that's baked in, and there's the information that it pulled, and it highlighted the fields that it imported information for. So that is a good barcode. I also set up the code so that if you do scan the wrong thing for some reason, it's going to know the difference, and it's going to tell you that doesn't look like a photo ID. Try again. And I don't have to back out. I can just go ahead and scan the right code, and it will grab that information. That was tricky in itself. I had to learn how to clear some fields so that things didn't go awry if you scanned multiple times. So there's the information. It also includes, looking and researching the PDF 417 barcodes and photo IDs. I found that the state photo IDs also have codes for mailing address in addition to a physical address. So if both happen to exist on the photo ID, mine doesn't, but if both happen to exist on the photo ID, it should import that. I say should because I have to have my hands on a photo ID that has that kind of information in order to properly test it. I've done some mock-ups, but there's really no way to know for sure until I get my hands on an actual barcode that has that information in it. So theoretically, it should populate both address sections if they exist. So let's take a look at the code real quick. So we start off in the code, just looking at my notes here. We start off in the code where we create the button, and then we create the modal that button opens up. Underneath that is some functions that we use. So here's where the function starts. This function, this part of the function right here, separates the information that's in the hidden text field where the barcode's scanned. It breaks it up, so it splits it up into an array. I have a function here that will change the case of the text. I found that on my photo ID, and I don't think this happens on all photo IDs, but on my photo ID, everything was entered uppercase. We don't enter our patron data in uppercase. We don't like screaming at the staff with information. So I incorporated a function that will translate that into initial case. I also found that with certain IDs, mine wasn't one of them, but with ones that I tested in our city, Coeur d'Alene, we tested a Coeur d'Alene ID, and it abbreviated or truncated the city of Coeur d'Alene to Coeur d'Al. So that's not how we enter that information in our patron forms. So here's a function, and you can modify these functions if you run across things like this, but you can add more functions to fix things that the state likes to truncate. So in this case, it fixes Coeur d'Alene. The next part of this function, it processes the data and establishes fields or variables for those different fields. And before we grab any of those fields, it's also double checking for certain instances. I found that I had some names that started with MC or MAC that the title, the initial caps won't catch. So this will fix those particular instances. So if it finds an MC or an MAC, it'll take the next letter and it'll capitalize that as well. It'll fix that. Tried to get what I could, but I can't capture every scenario that comes up. I figure I catch what I can, and after it scans the data and inputs it into the form, you can make whatever adjustments you have. It's not going to be perfect. That's why the fields are still editable. So you can fix addresses to the format that you need. What's important is that the information is there and accurate to what's on the ID. Then below that, we capture the particular fields that we want from the license. So it's grabbing things like names. It is grabbing birth dates if you want birth dates. It'll grab the addresses. So all that information is figured out here. So each of these codes, the DAC, the DAD, the DBB, the DAG, all of those are specific fields. I looked these up and they should be fairly standard. Again, I've worked with an Idaho ID, a Washington ID. I had a patron come in that had a Hawaii ID that I've tried, and George has been testing, and he tested his different Kansas IDs. So we know that these fields are pretty much standard. The next section after grabbing those fields that we want is assigning those fields, grabbing that information and sticking them in our form fields. So this is where it sticks that data into the form and also highlights those particular fields. There's a bit of logic underneath all of that too. As I said, well, I don't know if I can't remember if I said it, but initially when I wrote this code, I was looking at some way to indicate that it was done with the input. When you scan the code, and I'll show you this in a little bit, when you scan the code, it looks like it's scanning character by character, line by line. So it's this really long drawn out input. So it's not just like a patron ID or a patron library card barcode. So I had to come up with a way, it's actually inspecting the input character by character as it is processing. So I ended up having to implement a timer for this process. So anytime you scan a barcode, no matter if it's the wrong kind of barcode or a regular PDF 417, it's going to take the same amount of time. I set this to a default of 5,000 milliseconds. I'll show you where that is in just a moment. But if you need to adjust that, you can. But this was enough for it to get all the information, then process it. There was PDF 417s, the state ID. They didn't incorporate any kind of code to indicate that it's at the end, which is really troubling. So that's why I implemented the timer. I was relying on something else before, and it didn't work across different states because not every state included some of the things I was looking for to indicate that we were towards the end. Plus, some states don't put the fields in the same order, and that really made it difficult. So I had to really hone the field parsing and figure out a good solid way for us to indicate that all the information was entered for processing. So I have a timer in there. One thing that I had to learn how to do when I was dealing with other barcode scanners was figure out why the heck some barcode scanners were throwing Firefox into its reader mode. And I was finding out that some barcode scanners were throwing an F9 out there, which activates Firefox's reader mode. So I capture that particular character. If that key is triggered, I just tell the code to ignore it. And then here's where the SVG lives when you scan a barcode. It uses this information, and the SVG is in here, and this is where it creates that graphic. And this particular line is what tells the code that the barcode is perceived as a correct barcode, or if it's something else. If it does not start with the @ symbol, which is what it's looking for, then it's going to assume that this is not a photo ID. So I found that the photo IDs generally started with the @ symbol, so that's what I'm checking for. If you find something different, please let me know. But in all my tests, these PDF 417s for state photo IDs started with an @ symbol. So regular barcode doesn't have the @ symbol. It's going to say, hey, this doesn't look like a photo ID. And here in this section, here's the end of that timer section, and here's where that timer setting is set. So if you find that your barcodes are scanning much quicker, you can shorten this. You can shorten it and see if it still gets everything. This was a good safe value. So, and it doesn't take too long to process this time. So leave it at 5,000. Play around with it if you want. If you want to make it a little bit quicker, if you find that you're not losing any information through that, you can change that timing. All right, now here is a key section here. This one was another section that took me a while, because when I initially created my concept, it worked perfectly. And then I found, oh, it's not working in Firefox when I tested in Firefox, which is what most of our staff and our consortium use Koha under. So I had to do some digging, and I found out through console logs that some of the characters that are supposed to be line feeds are not showing up as line feeds. They're showing up as different characters. So in the case of our Honeywell, it was showing up as an arrow down. In the case of the data logic, it was showing up as an arrow right. And in the case of the zebra symbol, it was showing up as an alt key and then some various numbers. So I just watched for these three things. And if any of these came up, I told it to change it to a line feed. And that was all it needed. So it will compensate for these three different scanners. If you come across a different scanner that doesn't work, this is an area that you may have to do some troubleshooting with, or you can send some information to me and I can try to help you. I find that I can troubleshoot this much better when I have a scanner in hand. But I did incorporate some troubleshooting. Let me go back to the form real quick and show you some of that troubleshooting that you can do. All right. So I'm on the patron entry form. I'm going to activate our console. So F12 to go over, and then I go over to console. So I'm looking at console information. This has been an invaluable tool in this process. I'm going to go ahead and scan the photo ID, and you're going to watch. I've set up console logs to show the characters that are being input, and then if everything is processed correctly, it will show the entire input field at the bottom. So all of it put together. So here's all the individual inputs that are going on. And then when it's done with that timer, it breaks everything up into the line feeds and segments. And this is what we should end up with. if we don't process stuff correctly, it just ends up in one big blob and doesn't have the line feeds and can't break those fields up properly. So this is what I'm looking for. This is a good result where I'm seeing all the individual inputs, and then when it's done with the timer, it is showing the processed field. And you can see the @ symbol that's at the top. That's indicating that this is a photo ID, and there is no common symbology. There we go. There's the word I'm looking for. There's no common symbology at the end to indicate that this is done. So that's why we use the timer. You can see the individual fields, and I'm going to blur some stuff out because my driver's license number is in here. I don't want to share that. But this is what I use to debug. One of the things that I look for is, okay, if I look for one of the the inputs for the code that goes before some information I'm looking for, I can see, okay, here's a DCB. So what ended the previous field? What came at the end of the previous field? And here's where I found it was putting in an arrow down, and that's how I determined that's what I'm looking for to convert to a line feed. So all these arrow downs were basically where line feeds should be. So that's how I debug this. It was a tedious process. Now I've got a process down to where I can find this stuff out fairly quickly. And I left the console logs in the jQuery so that if you want to debug something, if you want to figure out why your scanner might not be working, this is a good place to go. So that is the photo ID scanner. The last thing I wanted to talk about, still to come, a project that I'm working on currently, or will be soon, is ILL book slips. Our process here at our library is that our ILL staff member will put a note in the patron account saying that the patron has requested an ILL. When that item has come in, she'll change the message, she'll update it, and she will check that item out to the patron in a record, an ILL record, and then she has some pre-printed slips. So she has to make these slips, cut up the slips, and they're on blue paper. She cuts up these slips, and so she'll have these pre-made, and then she'll fill them out and attach them to the book. So they look a little bit different than our regular checkouts. I was toying with the idea, what if she could have a couple buttons in the patron account to quickly add those messages that she commonly fills out on a patron account, and then all she has to do is add a couple pieces of information and it's there, and then she can change it when the item comes in, and in that process gather a couple more pieces of information, and it prints out the slip. She doesn't have to have pre-made slips, and if she were able to get a hold of some blue receipt paper, she could have that handy and she could print out that slip. It could still be a blue slip, but she doesn't have to have all these pre-made slips, and she only has to give a couple pieces of information rather than all of the information. The slip could already have the patron's name because she's in the patron account. But another aspect of this is she does not have to pre-make these forms for her to fill out. The benefit of that is if she were to change something, if she needed something changed with these forms, she could tell me, I could update the code, and the next slip that she makes is ready for her, and she's not having to throw out old slips that she had pre-made. So just, one aspect I thought of that might or might not be a benefit. I talked with her about it. She said it might work. So we'll play around with it. I did research, and there are indeed blue receipt papers out there. So So I'm looking forward to trying this out and seeing if we can get a working concept. So here's a good recommendation for how to go through figuring out whether or not something will work or not. Observe a particular workflow. If you find a problem or a workflow, look at it and say, is there something that I can do to make this better? Brainstorm on how you can improve it, whether that's just by yourself or with a staff member, the staff that it involves. Play around and try some ideas out, make sure, that it actually improves the situation, not adds a bunch of extra steps or work. Ask questions, ask staff and colleagues, support vendor with questions that you might have that might fill in some of the blanks. You might not know the workflow as well as you think you do. Walk through it with a staff member. Talk about it with other libraries that you're involved with, because you don't want to implement something at your library that's going to cause problems. Obviously, this would be a feature that, in this case, this would be a feature that, not everybody has to use, but it can be there if they want to go through that particular workflow, or you could enhance it to encompass more libraries that could utilize it. Play with it. I encourage you to play with it and try some things out. Get to honing your tools and your tool belt and tinker around and play. I've really enjoyed being able to help staff and try new ideas. And like I said, sometimes your ideas fall flat. Sometimes they just aren't worth the time. But sometimes they come out, they are something that's really helpful. And I'm glad to be able to share some of the ideas that I've come up with the community on the jQuery wiki and in other places. So that is it for my presentation. And if you have any questions, you can always email me. My email address is at the bottom here, cbrannon@cdalibrary.org. And I'm happy to answer questions through Slack or through email. And I hope you enjoy some of these enhancements.
Oh, I woke up just in time, didn't I? It was pretty good. I can see that there have been a few questions on Facebook Live, and we've got. I'm trying to remember how much time we've got for questions. Looks like we've got about 10 minutes, 12 minutes. So for the benefit of the people that aren't in YouTube, I figured we could go back over some of these. Some of them were a little facetious. Some of them were just not real questions. So let's see. Let's find a real question. It's hard because we were being so annoying to each other. Let's see. Can the photo ID scan be adapted to allow patrons to scan their driver's license when using self-registration from the OPAC?
And as I mentioned on there, maybe I think that's a good idea. I could see how that could possibly work. It would obviously take a little bit of adaptation because the code on the self-check, or see here, on the OPAC side is not necessarily the same as on the staff side. So there might be a little bit of adaptation with that code, but I don't see a reason why it couldn't work. I think though, with that, it would be geared more towards people that are doing it in a library that have the scanner, because most people that are doing self-registration, if they're doing it from home, they're not going to have a scanner handy to scan that code.
Right. I can imagine if somebody is doing it through the self-registration interface in the OPAC, they're going to be doing it on a phone. And a lot of phones have a camera app that you can use to scan different barcodes. But the issue I think that would come up is going to be how is each individual app parsing the data? Because that's what we found when we were testing this, is that each different barcode scanner seems to be chopping up the PDF data in different ways. So I think that would be possibly an issue, is that maybe this isn't going to work with every app on every phone that's built to do 2D scanning. So there's probably a lot of variables there. Let's see, what else is there on here? Let's see. You'd think the barcode scanners would have consistency. I was looking back to see if there were things from before the barcode scanner thing. It looks, most of the comments were about the barcode scanning app. There was a comment from
lots of comments about George.
Yeah, that guy is, what's his problem, huh? There was a question here from Sam Passy saying, will you put your monthly report dashboard in the Koha Reports wiki?
And I had considered whether or not I was going to include that particular one in the SQL library, just because it was very specific. It had some codes that I've hard coded into it. I mean, it's a good example. I don't know if it should live on the wiki. I can certainly hand it out to anybody that asks for it, but it's borderline whether it should be on the wiki or not.
I know exactly what you mean, because I have the same situation where I create reports that are kind of customized for Next Search catalog. And if I put them out there on the wiki, somebody else that thinks they can just cut it and paste it into their Koha is going to find out that, there are things we do that really don't translate into workflows in other libraries. So, and I know there's I'm interested in one of the talks today later is going to be about using custom authorized values tables, and I do that all the time. And so if I'm linking a report to a custom authorized values table, if you don't have that same custom authorized values table in your system, sharing the report with you isn't going to do anything for you. So, so I understand exactly why you didn't share that there. So,
I did share it with Jason, so that it's going to be included with notes wherever this is posted on the website. So it will be available in some way. If you want to email me, I can get it to you sooner. Otherwise, if you wait for the notes on the website, it should be included there.
There is a comment here from Avenging Chicken. I think we both know who that probably is. He says, I'd recommend you put it on the wiki, but with comments explaining what data are hard-coded or how it's library specific. People might learn something even if it's not perfect. So there's a comment from one person. So
I will think about that. I saw Barbara also had talked about how their patrons are, all of our patrons in the library fill out the SelfReg form and then come to the info desk to complete the process. If there's a way to be able to isolate it so that it can be done at a workstation and that feature is available at that particular workstation, then yes. And then probably is a way to do that, isolating an IP address. That's going to be beyond anything that I help with, because that's very specific, trying to narrow it down to a workstation and get it working at a particular computer rather than just anywhere. And if you have it available anywhere, you're going to get a lot more questions and a lot more things that you might not be prepared for.
Yeah, you know, we bought, well, you can actually see behind me are the boxes and boxes of barcode scanners. We're updating our barcode scanners throughout our libraries. This is actually what 144 barcode scanners looks like once they're delivered. And that, I think, is going to be an issue when we get these out to our member libraries. It's all part of a grant. Each library in Next is getting at least 2 new barcode scanners. And I'm sure what's going to happen is I'll put this plugin in, and then somebody at some library is going to leave one of their old 1D barcode scanners on a computer somewhere, and I'll go through all the training with them, and then a week later they're going to be saying, I can't get this barcode from the driver's license to scan right, and it's going to be because they aren't using the brand new scanner we got them. They're using the scanner that's 5 years old. It's, you know, that's one of the things I worry about with a feature like this that's tied to specific technology, is that it's going to be confusing for people. But there's no way I can tell Koha that this computer has a 2D barcode scanner and this one doesn't. So,
and I just want to throw out one thing. I see that our time is up here, but I just wanted to throw out one last thing is, you know, something like this. This is a nice feature. The Curbside tool and the Photo ID tool, they're both great tools because it does not disrupt the current workflow with staff. It's there, and you can use it, incorporate it into your workflow and improve your workflow with it, but you don't have to use it. So, you know, I made it live on our computers, and our library was the only one that could use it out of the 27 libraries in our system. But, you know, I was able to help out some other libraries start to get to use it as they were becoming interested. So, you know, making a feature that doesn't disrupt the flow, but can enhance it if somebody chooses to use it, that's a win-win. That's a good workflow.
There's also a comment here from the Avenging Chicken. He wants us to know that his real name is Fred King.
Oh,
He's
no.
just signed in with that name on YouTube. So thanks for clearing that up, Fred. Let me ask one more time if anybody else has any questions before we close up. Particularly, I don't know how many people are in the Track 2 room in McKinney, but does anybody there have a question before we leave? And now we have to wait for probably about 10 seconds because there is going to be a delay on YouTube Live. So. And actually, I just got a message in Slack from John, who was actually at the conference in McKinney, and he says there's about 10 people in the room there. So, and I think we had about 40 on YouTube, so you had quite an audience for this. But I'm not seeing anybody speaking up in McKinney, and I'm not seeing any more questions on YouTube. So thanks a lot, Christopher.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're now